What's up, T10 fam? Good morning. It is Sunday, October 5th, 7 a.m. Eastern Time. This is the Truth About Me. I'm Eric, and today we are going to be talking about this is episode 13, by the way. The impact we leave behind. Now, at some point, growth stops just being about you, it becomes about what you leave behind for others. Now, this isn't necessarily about a financial thing. Um, a lot of it has to do with, it's not a status. It's really, I've come to find out it's like an imprint on how you live. So, like what you do in your day-to-day activities, that matters. With your, as I've spoken about, with your vision, your consistency, your integration, your resilience, um, always moving forward, how you treat people, how you treat yourself. Um, they all have a pretty major impact as far as what your legacy is. Are you good at something? Is it something that you can pass down? Are you a tradesman, that you can pass down to one of your children? You know, um, that's leaving a legacy. It's leaving a legacy of being a good father, being a good man, doing the right thing. Um, so it's just not about, being quote unquote, trust fund type stuff. That's not necessarily a legacy. Were you a good business person? Were you an asshole? And not to focus on the negative, but they all come into play, and that's one thing you have to kind of understand what because your choices have actions and consequences, both good and bad. So I choose, I chose to live my life in a more positive manner. Um, the other day I happened to have been, it was Wednesday. Wednesday night it was an interesting night because, left work on the phone with my girlfriend driving home, just kind of talking about our day, and somebody just cuts me off. Just starts moving into my lane, like it's gonna hit me. Had I not hit the brakes, so I hit the horn, and continued on. Went to the gym, had a good workout, closed up the gym. When I was leaving, where my gym is, there's a bunch of auto mechanics there, and they stay late, and they burn around our parking lot. Well, the guy put it in reverse and was driving at a rapid speed, so I hit the horn, and one of his was like, "Hey," yelling at me, and it's just like, you know, I kind of brushed it off. I was like, "Geez, like I'm being tested today." And then I go to CVS because I had to pick up some things, and I'm pulling into the CVS, and where that CVS is, it's, you pull in, excuse me, you have the right of way. Well, the guy's sitting there on the horn, beeps at me as I'm coming into the place. I'm like, what's going on here? You know, Even though I sidetracked a little bit. Um, let's get back to legacy. Just wanted to kind of give you what um, that type of day was. Terrible day at work. I made a mistake. Um, and I don't like making mistakes, and I happen to have made one, and it was a simple, dumb mistake, but because it happened. Like it was just a rough day. Benefit was, gym was good. Excuse me. So, you know, I mentioned presence a lot, um, in how you show up, and that impacts your children, your partner, and loved ones um, by your presence. If you're showing up and listening and really keeping space for those that you love and care about, um, they will see that. It's your legacy is through honesty, through stability, and breaking those negative cycles. Now, to kind of talk about negative cycles is, and I've been kind of bringing this up a lot, with others is it's a lot easy. It's easier to excuse me. It's easier to focus on the negative. Why? Because everybody feeds off of the negative. It's easy because you don't have to take any accountability for yourself in that sort of capacity. It's living in the chaos, and most people love to live in the chaos. They love to point the finger. They love to not have the spotlight on them, if especially if it's someone else that's doing it. And you have to learn to break that because it will literally suffocate you and drown you because you are living in a fantasy land, you know. Um, and that's not the real world. And you have to, really kind of um, understand that is that doing the right thing, you have to do it twice as hard, simply because there are rules that you have to follow and to get there, and they're not easy. But this is a part of your growth that makes things makes it more rewarding for when you get to where you want to go. Looking at, you know, with your legacy, like your influence and how you act in the community, if you're big in your community and people see like, hey, listen, he shows up to, church on every Sunday, or he volunteers at the local soup kitchen, when needed, or he's constantly organizing things to help others. That does show, man. But, so now we're getting more, how are your friendships? How do you handle strangers? How is your work? Because all of that, comes into play. Um, and I know I mentioned work earlier, but it's true. Like, if you're a talented tradesman, whether you're a carpenter, electrician, plumber, HVAC, um, millwright, um, mechanic, salesman. Like there's artists that you can go through the gamut. The biggest thing is just being able to create time to pass along your knowledge to your children. Now, I had the experience of working in the family business, um, and understanding it, but again, it was kind of a trial by fire in the sense because one thing about my father is he was an excellent worker. He could work. You give him a job to do, he will do it. And that's just how he was. He was a terrible teacher, at least with me. Um, he would say things once, and if I didn't get it, and I asked for help again, now I didn't get the help. It would figure it out. So again, it was left to my own devices to kind of figure things out. And for a period of time, when I did figure it out, yeah, I got it, I understood it, and I made the most of it. But there also came a point where, um, when I was doing certain things and I kept on being wrong, I was never told the right way to do it. Or when I was told it was too late, or I had been quote unquote replaced. Go do something else. And that's something that always stuck with me and always burned me because um, I never had at that point in time. I never had that. You know, didn't have that. He didn't have the patience. He didn't have that. He didn't have the patience basically to sit there and kind of walk through it. It was because it's how he was raised. It was you were told one thing, and that was it. If you learned it, great. If you didn't, you'd lose out. So that's why it's important that when you're talking to your kids, or you're talking to a stranger, you're talking to an apprentice, that you're really wholeheartedly in it. Because you know when you're especially in a work environment, where you're in a trade, or I mean, even if you're a desk jockey, if you have, there's nothing better than a really good mentor or leader when it comes down to it. And that's something where they're trying to, pass something, some knowledge on to you when, while you're there because they don't want to see you fail. That's the positive side. The negative side is you have somebody that strictly that doesn't care about you and wants you to figure it out and is going to do the minimal requirement so they don't look bad. So when you have something like that, hopefully you find somebody that cares about what you do, what they do, because it's a reflection on them. If you do good, they look good. If you do bad, they look bad, and they just point the finger and say, "Well, I told them how to do this, and they didn't figure it out, so it's on them." So, kind of keep that in mind. One of the things when it comes to influence is, this YouTube channel. This is something where I've never done YouTube before, as you guys probably know. Um, I've never done any sort of vlogging, um, but I wanted to, create this so somebody can look back at it one day and be like, hey, like he gave me the courage to, stand up and make better choices with my life and make better choices, to become a better man, become a better father, become a better, partner, lover, husband, wife, whatever. That's, my goal is just to get through to one person. That's all. One person, you know, um, because that's how I feel about this. Is if I can get through to one person, then I've accomplished something. Just a small accomplishment like that would means the world to me. So um, now we get into like kind of your living your daily legacy, practical steps, living your values, teaching through action, repairing mistakes openly. Legacy is about consistency, not perfection. Say that again. Legacy is about consistency, not perfection. Nobody's perfect. Nope. If you strive for perfection, you're going to fail. Simple as that. However, by striving for perfection and failing, you know, that ultimately is a learning lesson. You found out what you can't do, and you use that information going forward. But the biggest thing that I can say is consistency will take all. Um, it took me a long time to understand that and really apply it to my day to day. However, you know, while being consistent, I have seen over a period of time the my hard work is paying off. You know, and again, it's going to be something that isn't immediate. It will take time. You have to be patient with yourself and understand that this is what you're going through, and it's not going to be fixed in a day. If so I mean, the as you stay consistent, you are going to continue to grow, and when you grow, that's when the changes start to occur, and they're going to be slow. They're going to be, it's going to be moving at that upward peak. You're climbing that mountain. So, however you choose, just remember, stay consistent. Consistent wins all, and you'll be much better for that. Um, you know, ultimately, by your daily actions and what you choose to do, creates a ripple effect. If you're around same amount of people, if you're in a group, that energy that you portray and throw out there is felt by the group as a whole, and they can feel it. Um, and they're gonna start to roll with you, and they're gonna start to understand, hey, listen, this is good. I'm enjoying that. And that's kind of one of the big things with, um, you know, and I speak about addiction because, being an addict, um, it's something that I understand. They're like, hey, listen, if you're having troubles, we want you to go to AA or we want you to go to NA. And that's why people gravitate to that because it's something that they can show up every single week. Or, I mean, they do have them daily, but I'm just saying, like, if, in the beginning, you usually go to one meeting a week, um, and you just sit there and you listen. And you're like, okay, that wasn't too bad, so I'm gonna go to another one. You go to another one, and the more and more that you do, you become more comfortable. And then next thing you know, when they're like, hey, listen, who wants to share? Now you've been going there 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row, and all of a sudden you get that pull to share your story or share something to the group, whatever it is, you know. Um, and and to me that's empowering for yourself because that shows growth, that shows courage that you were able to, you know, put that out there and put yourself in an uncomfortable position. So, um, but with that, by doing that, just shows, again, it shows your day, it shows your growth because now that's one thing that builds confidence, and confidence is something that you do on the day, on the daily. Is being confident walking around. You know what? The sun is a little bit brighter. You're walking a little bit taller. You're going to the gym. You're eating right. You're not drinking. You're not drugging. You're not doing any of that. And you start to see what life is really like. Living through a sober lens is humbling. It is. You know, um, I used to, drink alcohol to suppress, as I've mentioned in previous episodes. Um, you know, kind of drink the day away. If I had a bad day, let's drink it away. Fine, no problem. But guess what? All the problems that occurred on that day are still going to be there tomorrow. But now, living your life in sobriety is a different thing because it forces you to take everything on, take on everything head on, and you have to deal with it. You have to find a resolution for it, and takes, that takes quite a bit. So you have to be kind of mindful um, of that, um, during your journey. But with that being said, you know, leaving your legacy again, it's not about money. It's about what you do on the day to day. If you're a good person and you treat people with respect and kindness, and you just put nothing but positive vibes out there for everybody, then I can honestly say that you will be remembered. You may be, hey, there's that guy. There's the blue shirt. There's the guy in the white hat. There's the guy that just shows up and does his set and then leaves. Does his workout and then leaves. You can set a watch to him because he shows up at 5 and he's gone at 6. Like that's one thing, is everybody notices that, and you get pulled towards those types of people simply because they're in a different energy, they're in a different aura, they're in a place where you want to get to, and that's really what it is just finding that place and being in that place and then upgrading as needed, you know. Um, but again, this is a marathon; it's not a sprint. So kind of keep that in mind. Um, in closing, legacy isn't something you leave when you're gone. It's something you live every day. So I invite you to leave comments on this question. What part of your legacy are you building now? Like I said, leave a comment. let me know. Love to hear from you, and that way I can answer it. um, just kind of give you an update on um, what's coming on October 12th. Next week is forgiveness, both giving and receiving. Um, and that's a good one. That's a powerful one. Um, and that's something I can't wait to let you guys know, and we can kind of talk about, because that was a kind of a big turning point for me, was forgiveness. But with that being said, I want you guys to get after it today. If you haven't worked out, get your workout in, take care of the family. Um, kiss the kids, kiss your wife, kiss your husband, whatever it is that you need to do today. Get that honey-do list done on this beautiful now fall Sunday. We're starting to turn. However, the weather today is supposed to be in the 70s, so I'm excited for that kind of like an Indian summer, if you will. Keep this warm weather here for as long as possible. But that's a wrap on episode 13. Again, like, subscribe. We're here every Sunday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, um, for this podcast. I invite you all to come catch it. We'll talk to you later. All right.